At these moments, America has carried on not simply because of the skill or vision of those in high office, but because we, the people, have remained faithful to the ideals of our forebears and true to our founding documents.
The Department of Justice will serve justice.
Explosive new allegations in an infamous case of voter intimidation.
Not the fleeting interest of any political party.
Members of the new Black Panther Party wielding a nightstick and issuing threats to voters. There's someone at the DOJ made the call to drop the case.
So why would a bankrupt company that owes a fortune to creditors, including U.S. taxpayers, be throwing away millions of dollars worth of assets?
Companies like Solyndra are leading the way.
Well, Solyndra still owes American taxpayers $500 million.
Toward a brighter and more prosperous future.
The federal agency is now retaliating by firing the agent who blew the whistle on the mission that allowed thousands of guns to get into the hands of Mexican drug lords.
We're not talking about a dozen or even a couple hundred guns. We are talking about thousands of weapons.
Who really authorized this program?
At the very highest levels of the Department of Justice, they knew exactly what was happening.
Attorney General Eric Holder was sent briefings.
I probably heard about Fast and Furious for the first time over the last few weeks.
Documents showed that at least 10 months before that.
It's about a cover-up, about deception.
Allowing people who are not citizens of the United States to vote.
Who want to literally drag us all the way back to Jim Crow laws.
We found ballots being offered out in the name of the dead.
Hannity is not a U.S. citizen, yet is registered to vote.
It will require photo identification
before they went to the photo ID.
Against the poor, elderly, students.
How the structure is put in place, how they are distributed, whether or not it has a disproportionate impact on people of a certain race, certain ethnicity.
But why would it?
The gentleman's time has expired.
It feels like a lot of these laws are solutions in search of a problem.
And they were ready to present him a ballot. Would that kind of thing be of interest to the FBI?
And welcome to the special edition of Hannity. Now, that was a clip from a movie by Victory Film called District of Corruption. The film details the highest level of cronyism in Washington dating back to the Clinton administration. We're going to be showing you clips throughout the hour tonight. And the current administration was supposed to be the most transparent in history, but it's turned out to be anything but. And now we have another 4 years to look forward to. So can we anticipate cronyism and corruption until 2016? Joining me now is the writer, director of the film, Steve Bannon, and the author of The Corruption Chronicles, and president of Judicial Watch and the film's executive producer, Tom Fenton. Okay, explain what we just saw in that clip, because this goes deep into what this movie's about.
I wanted to make a film. I think Washington's become an imperial city, and it's been detached from the American people. I wanted to do a film that showed how that's happened, how this corruption, how this happened over the last 20 years, and particularly how it's culminated in the Obama administration. Every administration runs to be the most transparent administration in history.
They're all full of it.
And each one gets, but it shows you through Clinton and Bush and now Obama, on each time they run, because they know the American people want transparency, the American people want openness, and the American people want a government that's not in their lives. But each one increasingly gets more power to themselves. And so that's why using the Judicial Watch, kind of a David versus Goliath, a small organization that is tough as nails, that's always confronting the administration, and then taking the best of the young talent because mainstream media doesn't cover this. The town halls, the daily callers, the Breitbarts. So you have Katie Pavlich and Kerry Pickett and Peter Schweitzer and Mike Flynn. So combine that and tell the whole story and really end with the Obama administration, which concentrate everything the Obama administration has done in one film. And quite frankly, I think it's shocking. When you see it all together, you're shocked.
Because we start with Solyndra, we go Fast and Furious, blah, 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 and even now the Benghazi scandal, which broke after you were doing the film and the cover.
But it's the same type of thing where they don't want to, they do not want the information to come out.
Well, you know, the media can only cover so much about these scandals, and this is the first time that people are going to have the opportunity to see a sustained discussion of these important issues like Solyndra, like Fast and Furious, which is a continuing scandal. We cover a lot of it, but now we know that there are hundreds of others, Mexicans, who were killed as a result of these guns. And this movie is the first long-term discussion or long-form discussion of this important scandal.
You know, we'll get into this in more detail as the show goes on here, but in the case of Fast and Furious, our government gave guns to gang members, cartels, drug dealers. We didn't track them, and the result in the deaths of a lot of people, including a border agent. And then, of course, when we're looking for information, executive privilege is invoked from the most transparent administration in history.
This administration is less transparent than the Bush administration, which we can all agree wasn't all that big a fan of transparency. They fight us on virtually every document request we've made. We've made almost 1,000. We filed over 100 lawsuits. And the problem with this administration is they talk a line on transparency, but they fight you to death in the courts on it. And whether it be fast and furious, they don't want to turn over documents. You got to go over to court to get them.
It's going to happen in Benghazi Gates, Solyndra.
And it's not just about Obama. It's all the president's men. The real villain of this movie, in some ways, is arguably Eric Holder. His Justice Department is a locus of evil in this administration when it comes to public policy discussions.
Let's take Holder and Fast and Furious. I mean, you say the executive privilege. That's like a year into the process. I mean, they fight Congress tooth and nail to release any documents. The thing that's I think about the film that's so shocking, it's literally, like Tom said, it's everything they've got. Now it's Benghazi, and Univision just came out with more right. Unfortunately, people in Mexico.
It was thousands of guns, and there were kids that were mowed down.
Not just guns. These are the most advanced weapons. You know,
yeah, but
these are assault weapons.
Look at who they're giving it to.
Yes,
they're giving it to cartel members. They're giving it to known drug dealers with no means of tracking it. It's like here, go kill people. I mean,
and by the way, for almost a year, the mainstream media, except for CBS one time, you had Matt Boyle of Daily Caller, you had Katie Pavlich of Town Hall, you had Kerry Pickett of the Washington Times, you had these intrepid young reporters continually to track this story. It would have died. It would have died if the mainstream media had followed this. Nothing would have happened on Fast and Furious.
So this is basically what you're doing: is you're putting all of this great information that so many people work really hard on getting out there, and you're putting it together and saying cumulatively, this is what we're looking at.
It's an education. It's like a closing argument for this election cycle. But we go back to the Clinton days. We show that this just didn't happen.
I got a clip of Clinton. Now,
you show the increasing. Remember the Chinese generals. I mean, Clinton was about money. They came from Arkansas, and they saw a way to enrich themselves. The Clinton administration. Then he had the Bush administration, which Tom took to try to take to the Supreme Court. But then in the Obama administration, what is so callous about it is he ran specifically, part of Hope and Change, as you remember, I'm going to be the most transparent president. This is going to be the most transparent administration in American history. And it's anything but. The second and third act of this film is absolutely shocking because we've done all these scandals and shown how Judicial Watch and these new media companies have tried to fight him every step of the way.
The problem is, and this film points it out, that this is not going to begin, it didn't begin with the Obama administration, and it won't end after he leaves office.
But it's getting worse, and it's getting
metastasized. It's metastasized under this administration.
We're going to take a break. We'll have much more with Steve and Tom after the break, and then they'll expose the dangerous precedent of the administration of Barack Obama, how they have established sidestepping Congress and just appointing czars at will.
Under the Obama administration, they brought in a support system of unelected, unaccountable people who will make this country fundamentally different from what it should be as a republic.
ABC is planning a series called Dancing with the Czars.
The Obama administration has more czars than the Romanovs.
There are now reportedly 33 special envoys, maybe 34.
When it comes to the czars, every president should avail themselves of the best advisors, of a wide variety of advice on any issue that affects the nation. But under the Obama administration, they brought in a support system of unelected, unaccountable people who will make this country fundamentally different from what it should be as a republic.
This has been an attack on accountable government. The Constitution requires that if you're running a cabinet agency, you get vetted by the Senate. And that vetting is to make sure that you're honest and ethical and can do the job.
How were the Republicans able to push things through when they had less than 60 senators, but somehow we can't?
Well, the answer to that is they're It goes beyond incivility. It really is unacceptable in a public official.
It was a deliberate end run to appoint political operatives who could never get past public scrutiny because of their radical views.
And welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. That was another clip from the movie District of Corruption. Still with me is the writer and executive producer of the film, Steve Bannon and Tom Fitton. You know, it really goes to what was just said there, is that you talked about the Constitution requiring this. So let's bypass the system and we get unelected, unaccountable people that will follow out whatever the agenda is, and no input from our elected representatives. This was not how the system was designed. So the president figured out a way to bypass Congress.
You know, us conservatives, most of us didn't like czars to begin with. But of course, with Obama's, with everything else, what we don't like about government, he just does more of. And when he brings these officials, these czars, into the White House, what it means is you can't get records from them under the Freedom of Information Act, which is the key transparency law. And of course, Congress can't bring them in for testimony they're able to do with other officials in the agencies like the EPA. So when Carol Browner, the former green energy czar, is bringing in the car makers to talk about gas mileage standards, she tells them don't write anything down.
Yeah.
We can't get those records.
All right, so you got, but this is where we get Van Jones.
Van Jones.
You know, 9/11, what, truther and all these avowed communists?
Sean, the reason we start the section on the Obama administration, because we do go through Clinton and we do go through Bush, the reason we started here is that the guy ran on to be the most transparent. The very first thing he does, and this is very well thought through, remember the Obama administration, they're strategic. They have two things. Number one, they have a group of political operatives, like the Van Joneses of the world, that have no management experience, couldn't run big agencies, and couldn't be confirmed by the Senate, which is what the founders wanted. In addition, to Tom's point, this thing of open records. If you're doing something over the EPA or over the Defense Department, you have FOIA requests, the whole system to get information. But if you're running it out of the White House, if you're running it in conference rooms out of the White House with people that have mega responsibility over several agencies, then you can do what you want. So this was very well thought through from the beginning. The very first thing they did is to walk in with what, about 30 czars. And so it was twofold. People who were political operatives, who had radical backgrounds, who could never get confirmed and didn't have any management experience, and the fact that they thought they could get away scot-free from
But they did get away with it. I mean, think about it. They did get away with all these czar appointments, right?
Well, you know, Congress needs to take responsibility. You know, oversight of the administration over the government generally has decreased. The government's spending $1 trillion extra a year. There used to be 5,000 oversight hearings by Congress. Now it's 3,000. I mean, you would need 1,000 Daryl Ices to run to all the fires that Obama has set on the horizon. And Congress needs to exercise its oversight responsibility. It needs to say no to these illegal recess appointments that involve these czars.
That's another area where it is, what does Levin say in his book, Post-Constitutional America?
That's exactly right.
Right.
All of this just basically just tramples on the Constitution in terms of what, you know, oversight, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, on top of that, Obama promised differently. We're not holding him to any standard but his own. He promised that when these folks came in, if they were working...
So why does everybody ignore it? Why hasn't anything, you know, I bet for a lot of people, they're hearing this for the first time.
Absolutely.
Now, we follow it every day, but... you know, the rest of the country is now only beginning to pay attention.
This is one thing that got brought up by new media. I mean, it was the Glenn Becks of the world and Fox News and people like that in new media that started to bring up Van Jones and his radical background. I mean, if you looked at who he had originally with Carol Browner and Elizabeth Warren and Van Jones,
and Holdren,
and
Kevin Jennings is another one.
Kevin Jennings, the La Raza woman. You had all these people that couldn't have even been confirmed by a Democratic Senate. It was a dog's breakfast of appointments that he wanted to go. And to me, it should be a campaign issue. It should be an issue the American people
It
have.
allowed him to appoint the most radical people, unelected, unaccountable, so he could advance the most radical agenda. And in many ways, he was successful. Is there anything you can do legally to prevent this from happening?
Well, Congress needs to take steps here. I think the best approach is the approach to get the documents about what they're up to. Only when you expose what they're doing can you hold them to account. Elizabeth Warren, she said she wasn't helping the state's attorney generals with their shakedown of the mortgage industry. But we got the documents that showed that she was lying about what she was doing, that she was helping them. And she wasn't supposed to be doing that type of activity back when she was Obama's consumer czar. There is a way out. The movie is not just a complaint about government corruption. No. It gives you an approach on the way out. Don't rely on Congress. Don't rely on the big media or the legacy media. You need these activist groups like Judicial Watch. You need activist media like yourself and Steve to get this information out there. Congress isn't going to do it on its own. The media, you know, they're not going to do it on its own. You need the grassroots.
You talk about this every night, but it's going to come a shock to the American people to see this all in one place.
All right. Good to see you both. Thanks for being with us. And coming up, we examine the disastrous investment that cost taxpayers $500 million. It's known as Solyndra. So where did all of your hard-earned money go? That answer is coming up next.
This White House is completely comfortable with taking billions of your dollars and doling it out to favored interests, favored companies, and political contributors.